Ladies and gentlemen, now it's too late with Alan Mosley.
Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the number one producer in late night. It's Sherry Voluntary. Sherry, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thanks, except for all this poison oak I got, or poison ivy something.
Oh, you did?
I did.
When did that happen?
Well, I was tempted by some blackberries last week sometime.
Why they gotta be black, though?
I don't know, right? That's just what I grow, I guess. And I went down and picked them and got all scratched up and got poison oak.
That should show you that you're not supposed to intermingle the races. That's what we're doing tonight. We're starting right off the bat. This is totally not in our notes, so I know I'm going to make you freak out right off the bat. You know what I watched right before we sat down to do the show?
No.
I watched the documentary, What We Left Behind, which was the documentary about Deep Space Nine.
Oh, no, I didn't. I have to see that.
And,
I didn't even know that existed.
Not only, first of all, it's awesome. And second of all, this is just what it is, really. It's an opportunity for us to remind the audience that Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek series.
Second best, yes.
No, it's the best.
Wrong, kiddo.
No, it's the best. They actually do an excellent job of laying out the case of why Deep Space Nine is the best in the documentary by the characters and writers and actors and all that stuff. I'll tell you
they participated in it.
Well, I'll tell you the single reason why it is the best. It has the best characters. There's this very interesting line in the documentary where one of these guys, like this, big shot writer or whatever for CBS or something, was saying that the plot doesn't matter. The plot is just a device to unveil the characters.
Yeah.
And I was like,
it does have two of my favorite characters on it.
Quark and Garrick.
Garrick too. Yeah, I love Jadzia. And Garrick was amazing. Shut up. You just don't like women.
It's women. What? Yeah, I told you right before we got started that all I've been posting on Twitter, like sometimes I'll go in like these 24, 48 hour kind of like tests. I'll see like, I wonder, I posted something incredibly brilliant. No one gave a shit. I'm going to post kittens and we'll see how many likes and retweets the kittens get. The last day or so, it was, I'm going to post anti-woman hate speech. And you know what? It's gotten a lot of play. It's done really well.
Yeah.
But,
I'm not surprised.
I mean, the reason that is, though, is because there's not actually any women on the internet. So.
Yeah, or any men that women would sleep with.
Yeah, I mean, that, funny enough, one of the threads that people were commenting on was exactly talking about women not meeting their needs to
wifely duties.
Wifely duties, yeah. Boy, this has really gotten sidetracked big time, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. So anyway, this is something awesome that happened in the past week that we shared in the private Facebook group that I wanted to share on the show. So you might remember from a few weeks ago, we had a little clip from the monologue that was talking about Ted Cruz and his special little speech to his invisible flag god. There it is right there. Okay, Ted Cruz. But if you haven't checked out that clip, you should do so. But when you do, you should go check it out on YouTube and then look in the YouTube comments. There was these comments left by this guy. Check this out right here. This is a guy named Kevin Kostick, so whatever, Kevin K. The KKK, he says, your production value is too high for your level of subscribers. Fed or rich parents, ? Seriously, riddle me this. Where does your money come from? By the way, just...
to you. Look at his little smug, stupid face.
Now,
Kevin.
Now, in all fairness to Kevin, he had a fourth comment that just got caught by the censors where it said, you know what, F Ted Cruz. I
like him more now.
Okay, so there you go. So he hates Ted Cruz, which is the correct position.
Yes.
But it was probably the best backhanded compliment we've ever received on this show. It really is. So I shared that with our folks in the private group, and the immediate response was, because of course if anyone is controlled opposition,
Right.
it's too late with Alan Mosley. That's
Wow, we're
right.
doing a piss poor job. I can tell you that.
I got that. I got that Fed money. That's what I got.
Right.
What
Damn,
are
they
you?
don't pay like they used to.
What are you gonna do with your FBI money, Sherry?
I'm going to buy a sweatshop full of brown children to make me clothes and make me wealthy.
Now, hold on to that. We have a viewer mail question very similar to that. So you just hold on to
Oh,
that.
all right.
In all fairness, it's not that we're racist, it's that our audience is racist. And so
Right.
we're just giving them what they want.
Just pandering. That's right.
That's just what a good
Lib-
produced show would do. That's what
we're just on the pipeline. We're one stop on the libertarian to alt-right pipeline. Don't you
this
know?
this is the stop. This is the last stop
Oh
before
God.
yeah.
Oh, help us.
Okay. So right before we were getting ready to do the show, I had my little notes together and all that, and I thought I've gotten into this weekly habit of I'll take one last sort of stab at going out into the community, looking at the news, talking to people, saying, "Hey, what would you like to hear on the show this week?" I'm trying to be like I'm trying to provide good customer service here, right? I'm saying, "Hey, what would you like to hear on the show this week?"
Right.
And a couple of my friends has said, "Hey, you should talk about hashtag Free Britney. You should talk about Britney Spears."
Sounds just like the kind of thing you got like to get into.
Yeah, that's me right there. That's me, and that's exactly what you expect the like 25 to 44 white male demographic to want. They want more Britney Spears. So anyway, do we have a picture of Britney Spears?
Yeah.
No. No, that's not Britney.
Oh.
Whoever that is getting ready to give birth to Britney Spears. That is true. I tell you, on a totally random side note, so that was uber fat Jessica Simpson as opposed to moderately
she's
obese
pregnant.
Jeff.
Yeah.
I know she is pregnant, but she's had some trials and tribulations, if you will, with weight.
Girl, I feel her.
I feel like things really went wrong for Jessica Simpson when she fucked around with John Mayer.
Yes. I think
Okay.
that things generally go wrong for women who fuck around with John Mayer.
All right.
Yeah.
So do we have a real picture of Britney? Yeah, that's her right there. And so
She looks like my sister, and they both look fucking crazy. Like,
does your sister have like $100 million we could borrow?
I said she looks like her, not she is
Oh,
like her,
okay.
but I wish I would totally ask.
So I don't really want to get into a lot of the details about the whole Britney thing because like that's a whole that's a whole show unto itself. But I know that a lot of the issues kind of spring from, of course, she's been living under this conservatorship that's run by her family, primarily her father, James Spears. They call him Jamie Spears. Do we have a picture of Jamie Spears? Yeah, that's him. I mean, if the shoe fits.
The armor fits.
Yeah, but the armor fits. I really should have gotten a picture of Tywin and Cersei because that actually works pretty well for this situation. It really does.
Yeah. Missed
but-
opportunity.
But for my friend Brad, who was actually the person who had suggested this topic, Brad, this is for you. Is he had said something that I thought was really brilliant when he was saying, "Hey, you should talk about Britney Spears," and his take was, when you look at the system, and goodness knows we talk about the injustice system on this program all the time. But when you look at the system and you look at conservatorships in particular, and the power that judges have, the takeaway there is that any one of us could be one bad court date away from living the nightmare she's living right now.
Correct.
We really could. Yes.
Absolutely.
And my response was, without getting into a lot of the details of her case in particular, is this is something that could apply to a lot of cases, but also could apply to a lot of things in life, which is there's a difference between dealing with it versus addressing a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Her father, Jamie Spears, is dealing with her. They're not addressing and solving her concerns. They're dealing with her. Mm-hmm. And so now, obviously, in the process of James Spears dealing with his daughter Britney, of course, I know a lot of the heat is they're sort of tidily padding their bank accounts as they do it. He's not worth that money. She's worth that money. Right. But he's drawing something like $150,000 salary for being her manager or conservator. But you also know that they basically just have the money to hire people to take care of a lot of things. And so it makes you kind of just wonder out loud, well, why are you in your kin drawing all that money off of her then?
Right.
Let's be real here. And so I know that that's where a lot of the controversy comes from as well. But it's not just that that's a very self-serving approach, but it's also that obviously, because she's been in this situation for so many years, that approach doesn't really have any particular end game, right? Like there's no end in sight for her. There's no line where you say, okay, well, things are better now. Off you go then. You're free to live your life and
Right.
see your kids and all that stuff.
No
And
light.
yeah, there's no light, and there doesn't seem to be any attempt at reaching that. Like that's not even on the table. And so when they're not really even moving towards any particular goal for her, then obviously her actual well-being is basically just irrelevant to them.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I'm being harsh. I don't know these people. And that's one of the main reasons why this hasn't really been a topic of conversation. I don't know these people. But it certainly seems from a distance that they don't have her best interests at heart.
Right.
But on the other hand, when you're actually addressing a problem and you're looking to find solutions to things, because a solution also comes with finality, right? Like you solve a problem and then you move on. But by the very nature of that approach, it's about prioritizing, empowering that individual to pick themselves back up and carry on, because I mean, she's a lot younger than her dad, so if no one ends the Fed, then she's going to be alive a lot longer than he is, right? So she needs to be empowered to carry on with her life, not just taken care of or dealt with forever. And that made me actually then, I don't know why it popped into my head, but that then made me think about secession. And I know that might seem like a really weird jump, but it made me think about secession, and it made me think about how the idea of secession isn't just one group, say, becoming two groups, or even 3 or 4 or 5, 6 groups. And it doesn't just necessarily mean that those subgroups become smaller subgroups. You can take the idea of secession all the way down to the individual level. And that's something that Britney probably could use a little bit of right now.
Yeah.
The courts be damned. But we're going to get to that later in tonight's episode. We're going to be right back with the Meme of the Week and the viewer mail right after this. Don't go away. You know what I like most about the 10th Amendment Center commercial? Is that
The music?
If you changed the music to something really upbeat and positive and you added exclamation marks and smiley faces, it would make it sound like all those things were good things. Because the normies
Like the
who
feds
watch,
were saying it.
yeah, the normies who watch NBC and CNN, they're like, oh, the left and right are in it together. Oh, that's lovely, bipartisanship.
Bipartisanship. Yay.
Hey, Sherry,
Yes.
what time is it?
Meme of the week.
When you accuse Cuba of human rights abuses, but you also run a torture camp from there. That's one of those things that's just been completely forgotten. Like,
Yeah.
it's that meme is such a good meme, not just because Cuba is in the news right now, but also because I actually just had a conversation with my folks the other day, and somehow or another Guantanamo Bay came up in the conversation. Probably had something to do
You were
with
threatening them.
well, it was me doing my typical joke of, oh, I said an unapproved thing off to Guantanamo.
Oh.
But
I
it
thought
just,
maybe as a Fed you were threatening to send them there since you're a Fed. So
yeah, since I'm a Fed, that's right. I, but anyway, you know what? I'll sell out to pretty much anybody except for the Feds, I think.
yeah, yeah.
If I could get one of the big tech companies that are totally private, yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So, so here's the thing: is that I had said to them, that was opened obviously at the onset of the War on Terror, and everyone talk about George forgetting things. Nobody remembers George W. Bush,
Mm,
but Obama ran on a platform of, oh, we're going to close that,
right.
and then he had 8 years as a Democrat.
Yep.
And then you had Trump for another 4 years of a Republican. And now we're back to another term of Democrats. And I'll be damned. Still open.
Kind of like that abortion issue, huh?
Yeah. That's right. Guantanamo should be aborted.
Yeah. Now there's some abortion we can agree on.
Let's speaking of things we can agree on, let's answer some viewer mail.
All right.
It's so intense.
It,
I don't know why.
it looks like some secession was happening though.
It was. All right. First question is Adam Sakosan writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, after running over dogs, do you fix your car yourself or take it to a shop? Um, I have never hit a dog. Thank
Yeah,
God.
me either.
I've never hit a dog. I've probably hit 700 or 800 possum out here,
Yeah.
armadillos and whatnot, but I have never hit a dog. I'm really glad I've never hit a dog
Mhm.
or a
Love
cat.
dogs.
Yeah. I've never hit a family pet. We'll put it that way.
Nice.
Unless one of those possum was the family pet in that case.
Uh-oh.
I've definitely never hit something that was so tremendous that it needed repairs for the
Right.
vehicle. So,
More than just like the hosing off the car a little bit.
just hose it off. Ryan Seifert writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, what flavor ice cream were you eating when you ran over your pedo teacher's dog? So, just so for folks at home, there's a reason, there's a setup for these questions. It would take like the whole rest of the show
Yeah.
to get
You have to
into
go in
this.
the community group, join the
You gotta
community group, and you can see the jokes.
you gotta go to facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You gotta like the page, and then you have to ask to join the private community group because I went underground. Now we do the funny bits and the viewer mail. It always happens in the private group. So
Okay.
you got to go join the private group to understand what in God's name Ryan is talking about. I'm just gonna assume Ryan asked what your favorite flavor is, and I'm just gonna say like peanut butter cup, whatever. What?
Strawberry cheesecake from Mayfield. That's
Oh,
mine.
wow, it's so fancy,
So
so
good.
fancy. Here's
So
your one
good.
chance, fancy. Don't.
Don't let me down.
I love how you couldn't resist singing it. You like I was doing a dramatic reading of fancy, but you you couldn't.
Oh, I do a great Reba impression. My kids hate it. I've sang that song to them so many times just to annoy them. Anyways, continue with your
All
show.
right. I couldn't imagine your lovely children hating anything you do. Jeannie Carroll writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, thoughts on the California special election? Now, I've warned Jeannie before already that we don't
Ah,
do political stuff in the viewer mail, but
Gene.
I'm gonna answer her question, and the answer is God, I couldn't imagine caring what happens in California. It
Did it
just
float it to the sea? That's when we'll have something to say about it.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, very very biblical, I think. Oh, so I was talking to one of our religious friends recently, and I'm not going to name who it
I
is,
can guess who.
but I had said to this person, like, what's that story, the binding of Isaac or whatever, where God tells Abraham, you should just go kill your son, and Abraham's like, oh yeah, whatever, and so he's going to go do it, and then God's like, nah, it'll be fine, don't do
Nah,
that.
boy.
And Abraham's like, okay, I was going to, but all right. Did Abraham violate the nap with Isaac?
Well, he didn't actually kill him, but
Yeah, but I mean, he was going
You
to.
did
He certainly
find him.
threatened to
Yeah.
do.
I mean, do we have to talk about it?
Checkmate, Christians. Lauderio writes, this is why we can't have nice things on this
Yeah,
show.
exactly.
Is I put together these
Possessed by the
very
devil. That's
I put
why.
together like 17 pages of show notes for the serious segments, but we're running up into the final commercial break by the time we get through the goddamn viewer mail.
See? Possessed by the devil. Get thee
Well-
behind me, Alan.
Lauderio writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, do dogs really not know that bacon strips aren't bacon?
I,
Now,
uh,
Lyle wasn't even a part of those previous questions. He somehow meandered his way into it.
yeah,
I don't know what the hell's going on.
just he gets it. He gets it.
You know what? On second thought, don't join the community group. Tis a silly place. Don't do it.
Silly place. There's spankings everywhere.
So I think they physically do know that bacon strips aren't bacon, but dogs are like just little scavenger SOBs. They're just, you're going to eat it.
Right. The
Yeah.
real question is, do they care? And I think the answer is no.
Yeah. Well, it's the Homer Simpson. Just because I don't care doesn't mean I don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Ryan Seifert writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, can you beatbox?
Oh,
Okay.
Bismarck, he just died too.
You just fucking interrupted me. What's wrong with you? Okay. No. You know what? No. There you go.
But I think you can if you want to.
No. Adam Sakosan writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, do you like Tang? Sherry, do you like Tang?
It's the drink of the astronaut, so of course.
So no, then you don't actually like Tang. Is that what you're-
I used to like Tang when I was a kid. I haven't had it in 30-something years, so.
You know what? Are you ready to have your mind just blown?
Yes.
I've never had Tang.
You never had Tang?
No.
Really? Not even
Never.
when you were little?
No, when I was little, we just had Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you know what? I think it was probably more popular when I was younger because we're about 10 years apart or something like that. And I think it was probably more popular when I was a kid.
I've always known what it was.
Right.
I've
Everybody
never had
knows
it.
what it is.
Yeah. So you send us some Tang, and we'll do the Tang taste test on the show. So there you go. Marilyn Wilimowski writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, do you believe zipper merging is the best and proper way to merge when a traffic lane ends? So I think I've actually talked about this on the show before, just in passing. So a zipper merging is the best and proper way to do it, but nobody will because they're just selfish cucks. Just every one of them. They won't do it.
Always some bubba with a "don't tread on me" and an American flag that can't seem to figure it out.
Well, it's like the crabs trying to get out of the bucket. That there's going to be some people who at least know what zipper merging is, but they're also thinking, but that other guy won't do it, so I'm not going to do it, and then it all falls apart.
Like society.
Like this show, really. This show is we knew to zipper merge, but we just didn't.
We took a left turn at racism in the beginning, and it's all downhill from there.
That's in my defense. In my defense, it's because I'm the scorpion and Scorpion and the Frog. It's just my nature.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay. Andrew Avery writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, are the Texas Democrats unsure about their status or are they positive?
Wah, wah.
So that was another thing that I actually got all of the stuff together for, to do a whole segment on the Texas Democrats fleeing the state to avoid the vote. And I ended up throwing the whole thing out because fuck them. That's why.
Right. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares? That's like I'm not saying that there's not a big difference between Texas and California, but I care just as little about what happens in Texas as I do what happens in California.
Yeah, they should build a wall.
God, they should. They.
The great they.
Collectivist.
Mm-hmm.
MD Culp writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, with college football only a month out. Okay, So, dear Alan, not
Dear
Sherry.
Alan, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
with college football only a month out, are the Vols over or under 3 wins this upcoming season? Bonus, does Memphis currently have the best college football team in the state of Tennessee? Um, I love how your answer's just you know what? It's going to be lean times again, I'm afraid, for the Big Orange.
No, you don't say.
I swear to God, if they're just gonna hire people for like $5 or $10 million just to win 2 or 3 games tops and fire them, do me next.
Right? No,
Do
no
me
kidding.
next. I'll do it.
You all be as good as any of the other jokers they've hired. So there you
For,
go.
I mean, so first of all, just yes.
Yes.
And second, I will hire you as my defensive coordinator.
Ooh, I like that idea.
All right. Eric Eli writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, is it easier to scale a brim or a catfish?
He's testing us.
So catfish don't have scales.
Right.
So
Southern.
But this is still so this is actually a double trick question, because not only do catfish not have scales, but if catfish don't even have scales, does that mean that by default it's easier to scale a brim because they have scales to?
I think that's correct.
That they're the hardest ones because catfish have already been scaled.
You skin a catfish like you would skin a cat. Maybe that's the answer. And you scale a brim.
And I also don't want to eat a brim, but catfish is good eating.
Catfish is damn good eating, son. Yeah. That's right.
So if you send us catfish and tang.
Woo! Hey, now we're throw some pintos and some cornbread in there and we're going to have us a meal.
I got to tell you, I'm so disappointed that tonight's show is going to be like so deep and philosophical and we're already like halfway through. This is really bad.
Sorry.
By this is really bad. See, this is me doing like Kevin K from the YouTube comments. I'm making a backhanded comment to my producer saying that she's done a terrible job of keeping this show on track.
It's all my fault. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's whatever happened to Blake.
He ran off with some goats.
You know, somebody actually asked me last week for real whatever happened to Blake, and I told him Blake died.
That is real.
I told him Blake died, and I said no more about it, and I'm not sure if they thought I was joking or not. And I'm not gonna say anything else.
Yeah, just let it hang.
Eventually, Blake will pop back up in the chat and say, "What's been going on?" And people will be like, "Oh, it's Blake. She's alive."
Resurrection.
Yeah. Blake always had a little bit of a Jesus thing going on, I think.
Yes.
Well, he's German. I mean, he's like Aryan German. He's got like the blonde hair, blue eye.
Oh, is this where we're going now?
It could be. I don't know.
It's getting deep, man.
Dan Roberts writes, this is goddamn. This is bad, y'all. Dan Roberts writes, Dear Alan and Sherry, why are we all so autistic? Dan, my answer to you is who's we?
I think you know.
We. And finally, Rachel Watson Kennerly writes, Dear Alan and the best producer in fake late night shows. I tell you what, Rachel, have you and Rachel had some kind of a falling out?
I know she's coming at. Last thing I knew, she was sending me pictures of tomatoes, and now she's coming for me.
Maybe that was some type of code for...
I'm going to kill you, bitch.
Yeah, like... Sure. What sort of slave labor would you have the Uyghur Muslims perform?
Wow.
Now... Wow. Rachel is like prophetic, because here you were in the monologue saying, let's talk about what we will have our slaves do. And Rachel, sure enough, really wants to know.
Right. Yeah, maybe there's a reason she hates me. I need to do some self-reflection here.
What sort of slave labor would you have Uyghur Muslims perform? I would have them cure bacon.
Ooh, that's better than making sugar. We already know my answer. Thank you.
So, just for people keeping track at home, we just went over the 30-minute mark on the show. This segment's supposed to be done in like 22 minutes. So for the people who were really looking forward to this week's show because Alan was going to go on like this big, long philosophical rant thing, 8 minutes of it's already out.
Just be more efficient, Alan.
Yes. Dan writes, why? Who we? Then Rachel writes, slaves? Yes. Guys, we're going to be back to talk about the scary S word right after this break. Don't go away. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for It's Too Late with Alan Mosley. Email us at info@alanmosley.tv. Guys, welcome back to the show. Our first topic for today, really our only topic for the day, because the show's just gone to shit already. So the only topic for today, slaves? Yes. Speaking of slaves, look at this picture right here. Shock poll: 2 in 3 Southern Republicans want to secede from the United States.
Yikes.
Now that would have been more appropriate if it was Southern Democrats.
Right, exactly.
Than Southern Republicans. But nevertheless, shock poll: 2 in 3 Southern Republicans want to secede from the United States. Now, this is very interesting. I'm going to read a little bit of this article. A shocking YouGov poll found that 66% of Republicans in southern states want to secede from the United States. The survey was provided in conjunction with Brightline Watch. Now, the way they did this survey, if you're like, well, how did they come up with that number? So they broke the country down into several different regions, and they provided that knowledge up front to the people that took the survey. And they found out, what political leaning are you? This is what region you would theoretically be in if the country were broken up into smaller parts. Would you want to secede into this region, yes or no? And so for people at home to understand what we're talking about, here's the regions right here. So you've got the Pacific region, West Coast plus Hawaii and Alaska. Then you have mountain, and then you have the South, but it's not just like the old Confederacy. You've also got, you do have Tennessee, but Tennessee was a part of the old Confederacy.
Yeah, mostly.
But I mean, Texas sort of kind of was. I mean, you've also got Oklahoma, Arkansas. Virginia still counts to be in the South according to their polling, but I mean, modern Virginia is nothing like 19th century Virginia. Yeah. And then you have the Heartland, which also includes your upper Midwest, Rust Belt states and the like. And then you have the Northeast. And then they go on to talk about how, so knowing what region you would theoretically be in, do you favor secession? Yes or no? And check out the map right here. So this is the map of all the regions broken apart, and it has it broken down into Republican, Democrat, and Independents, and what percentage of those different groups, and then what percentage of the total amount of people in each region would say, yes, I would favor secession into this region. Now, that's a hell of a graphic right there. And now the headline that kind of draws in the viewers was that headline of 2/3 of Republican Southerners want to secede. And that's true in the sense of it was indeed 66% of Republicans polled in that region said, I would favor secession. And that was the highest percentage of any particular group in any particular fantasy seceding region. But what really jumps out for me at that graphic right there is, look, none of these numbers were close to zero.
Right.
None of them.
Not even.
Not even. I mean, what's the smallest amount? Democrats in the Democrats in the Heartland are 19%.
Yeah, 17 in the mountain.
Yeah. So I mean, but still close to 1 in 5 in of the most politically disenfranchised still favor secession.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, when someone says to me, "Oh, did you know 2/3 want this?" I'd say those are rookie numbers. We gotta get those numbers up.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, and we can go ahead and kill that map. But the funny thing is that if you look at just the whole country, with the knowledge given up front that this is what the country would be. It's not just going to be left and right. It's going to be broken up into several different regions. None of those numbers are close to zero. I mean, at a minimum, you have areas where it's 1 out of 5, but for a lot of places, it's a third or more. And even though they really talked about Republicans in the South, you look at Democrats on the West Coast, they're close to 50%, close to half.
Yeah.
Independents nationwide are a third or up or better, as high as 50% in certain regions. And so the reason why I really wanted to get into that is that secession, as it pertains to, the establishment and the schools, which is the establishment, and the corporate media, which is the establishment, and big tech, the word secession is still a boogie word. Like that word is just synonymous to those groups with racism and oppression and the fall of democracy and yada 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 yada. All the typical BS you learn in school. People immediately think of Confederacy, Civil War, on and on. But despite that having been drummed into people's heads in the schools and elsewhere for generations, I mean, nationwide, it's damn close to about 40% of people nationwide. When you think of the Democrats in areas that are heavily blue, as well as Republicans in areas that are heavily red, and independents everywhere, it ends up being dang near 40% of everyone nationwide is thinking, maybe we should break this thing up.
I like it.
I mean, I kind of like it too. I'm not gonna lie. And so when I look at that, the reason I wanted to talk about this was a little bit is that, okay, so more people are looking more favorably at secession, at political divorce, despite it having the narrative being contrary to that in the mainstream for, I mean, to say over a century, I don't think is an exaggeration. I really don't. But we should welcome it. And it's not, the reason why I thought that particular poll was really interesting was because they had those different regions broke up. And I don't really feel like getting into the nuances of different regions or whatever, because it's not about the result of the breakup being perfect. It's about it being preferable to what we have now. And when you think of keeping everyone together in one unit, and that means by force, that inevitably means leading to violence, because you have people in this country that have irreconcilable differences. And also, by the way, for the people out there that think, well, it's a non-starter to even talk about because they, the great they, as we talked about in the last segment, they wouldn't allow it. They being the feds, the establishment, they would not even entertain this conversation because, implied is or else. If you try to do this, then they would come after you. I just got to tell you that I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way. I'm not saying that I deny that. What I'm saying is that if they are using the threat of violence to dissuade people from even having this conversation, that's not a reason to stay together. That's just that much more reason to break up.
Exactly.
When your abusive spouse says, if you leave me, I'll kill you, that doesn't mean stick around. That means actually flee. That's what that means.
Probably time to go.
But that was basically what I had prepared for a segment. And I thought that we could sit here and talk about secession. We could talk about our perspective. We could talk about, kind of the old South and different things. But I thought, we've discussed those types of things before. I think the first time I was ever interviewed on a podcast was when I was on the Sherry Voluntary Show. And we talked about exactly that topic.
I think you might be correct there, Alan.
Yeah. And so instead of that, I wanted to kind of segue into a different sort of topic. And that was something I was beating around with a friend of mine, because that's what we do. We beat around.
Together.
Together. but back to back.
Don't cross the streams.
And it got me something that a concept I was playing around with was, there's this natural antagonism between similar people in ideological groups who draw their lines in the sand in different places.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. A very modern day example is, we're in the era of COVID. I'm hoping the era of COVID's coming to an end. But we're coming fresh in our minds are mask mandates and lockdowns and all this crap. And I've made it a point to tell people multiple times on different programs on social media that I never once wore a mask. I never once did, and I never will. And I'm not just saying that as some type of a brag. Oh, look at me. I'm the real libertarian because I didn't wear a face diaper. I mean, okay, it is a little bit that. But it's not just, it's more that what I'm saying is that that's where I drew my line in the sand. I had said, I'm not going to do this thing, and I'm going to be willing to face the repercussions. I'm not even going to say necessarily consequences, because to me, consequences carries with it authority, and they don't have that authority over me. I don't grant them that authority over me, but I would face the repercussions. And I did, because while I may not have ever been pulled over and arrested or anything, I definitely had a harder life. I couldn't go certain places and couldn't do certain things because I just was not going to subject myself to that. But I know that there's people that draw their line in the sand right there. And then there's other people that would say, well, I got to do what I got to do to get by. It's not, I'm just weighing the cost benefit, right? And I'm saying it's just not worth it to me to draw a line right there.
Right.
And then, and by the way, I don't want to get sidetracked by the Rona, because it's not about the Rona. It's about having a different point where you draw your line. But what can happen then is that you can then have these different people who drew their lines in different places that are ideologically identical. These are the same type of people who have the same beliefs and value systems. But all of a sudden they become naturally antagonistic towards one another. So Group A is kind of looking down their nose at Group B, saying, here we are standing up, and you're not joining us. You're weak. You're a coward. You're one. If you're not with us, you're against us. That sort of thing. And then you can have Group B firing in return that, well, what good are you doing? What is that going to accomplish? It's going to accomplish nothing. We're not going to be in a free society because you decided to make this stand right here. All you're doing is just breaking our numbers up into an even smaller group. Mm-hmm. Now we're even less politically relevant than we were the day before. And I'm not even necessarily here to stake my claim on which one of those particular angles I agree with more than the other, because I feel like deciding on where you side on that, it depends on whichever particular example you're giving. I gave the example of whether or not you're going to wear a mask, but I mean, you could apply that to any number of acts of tyranny or oppression that have happened in our lifetimes and say, okay, did you draw the line there? No. Okay, what was the next thing? What was the next thing? What was the next thing? And so, ironically enough, our religious friend that I had referenced earlier, he had given me the analogy of, well, that in Christian circles, there's kind of the tongue-in-cheek joke of you can have a religious organization where all of these people are of the same faith and they all believe by and large the same things, and yet they can argue over something like, did Adam have a belly button?
Right.
And people can have such deeply held opinions on that particular issue that all of a sudden the ones, that particular organization can have the official position of he didn't. And then the ones who say, no, he did, will end up leaving the church. Right. And they'll go across the street and open a new church. And again, like, I'm not even trying to get into the tactical value of whether or not that breaking up was the right thing or wrong thing to do. It's more to say that's part of irreconcilable differences. That's part of association and disassociation. It's that you can agree still on 99% of things, but if you take that concept of secession that we were just applying to, the American empire, the biggest government in the history of the world, and breaking it down into just more than one piece, you can continue to bring that down and bring it down further and further and further, and you can get more and more local, and you can apply that to different communities and different, or like in this case, a religious organization. And it makes me think that this is I'm not going to play the Ron Paul meme of this is an idea whose time has come, but it's definitely a lot more in the conversation, I think, than it has been perhaps in our lifetimes, at least.
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah. So on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to flesh that out a little bit more and talk about the difference between taking over and breaking away. So we're going to talk about that right after this commercial break.
If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley.
It's the half a second delay that makes it endearing. I just want you to know that.
It's absolutely correct on my end. Just
Okay,
so
all right. So anyway, welcome back to the show, guys. So we're talking about that scary S word, secession, and where we're at in the conversation, because I'm just sort of like, this is just a stream of consciousness episode for our friends and our fans out there that said, Alan, I really like it when you just talk about stuff and things, and so that's what we're doing tonight. When you're talking about political decentralization, when you're talking about secession, when you're talking about association and disassociation, it's important to distinguish the difference between people who are fighting to take over versus people who are fighting to break away. Because those are very different things, and I think often they're very different morally and ethically. So, case in point, if you are participating in the modern political climate and you're playing the numbers game, you're playing that collectivist, because politics is a zero-sum game. This political system is not designed in such a way that if you put on a good face and knock on a few doors and get 5% of the vote, that just means zero. That's all that means. You either get 51% or you're zero. That's it. And so the people who play that game, no matter what kind of good intentions they may have, at the end of the day, they're not fighting to break away. They're fighting to take over. Now, they might have all sorts of ideas of how they can do things better. They might, in their heart of hearts, truly believe that if they could just get the One Ring, then they'll destroy it. They'll be the ones.
Right.
They'll be the ones to destroy it.
Precious.
Yeah. But I just reject that. I just absolutely reject that. So first of all, history is pretty perfectly clear that just never ends up being the case. You either never win, and the ones who do win, who no matter from what odds they came from to usurp that power, it never goes away. Right. It never goes away. And I would dare say, pardon me for saying this, but this touches on the reasons why I don't support the LP. I don't support any people who are involved politically. I don't support the Mises Caucus. I don't support any of that garbage, because those people are not fighting to break away. Those people are fighting to take over. And so, okay, well, what's the difference then? What's the difference? There's breaking away. Breaking away, fighting for your right to disassociate, to remove oneself from that collective. That is what secession is. And yes. And again, to kind of remind ourselves from earlier in the conversation, is that when there's such strong differences that persist amongst a group of people that just cannot be reconciled, then even if imperfect, it's best on everyone's behalf to part ways. That is the most peaceful way that it can possibly be done. So I guess what I want to kind of sort of wrap up with here tonight is that we can have sharp disagreements on the value of where one line in the sand is drawn versus another. But above that, we should appreciate the right to break free, which is secession, but also known as self-determination.
Yes.
I think self-determination has a much more positive connotation in modern or ancient lexicon. I think self-determination is one of those foundational principles of this fairy tale America that people think of.
Right.
But self-determination in so much as there is a collective and someone wants to reclaim his right to self-determination, politically or otherwise, that is seceding. That is secession. That's what that is.
Yep.
So to bring this full circle to Britney Spears,
I was wondering when you were getting to that.
all of this talk about secession can be brought down logically to the individual level.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends was talking about, I don't know how the conversation came up, but it got to talking about how obviously the Nazis were terrible, but the communists are terrible. Mm-hmm. But in the mainstream, Nazis are seen as the ultimate baddies.
Right.
No one can deny that. They're always seen as the ultimate baddies of just modern human history. Whereas, like, the communists or the Soviet Union or all communists of the 20th century and beyond are not seen in the same just objectively evil light. We do. We see them that way.
Right.
But in the mainstream, they're not seen that way in quite the way that the Third Reich is, that fascists are. But that's so weird to me because, in a way, it's... And I know that there's people that would be like, well, the Nazis were socialists and blah, blah, and I'm not saying I disagree with that. But what I am saying is that the Nazis were nationalists, and that's terrible. The Nazis, I feel like we shouldn't have to sit down and list all the reasons why we think Nazis are bad.
Right.
And Hitler was wrong. But beyond that, they were nationalists, and their being nationalists, they had an in-group that they believed to be superior, and then they would do things, sometimes things that you could identify really as masochistic in nature. Sometimes they would do things that would hurt their own liberty and prosperity in order just to maintain the in-group, at least in their minds, to maintain the in-group. And that's what nationalists do. But the communists were really universalists. They were that next layer of the onion above the nationalists. And the main difference between the Nazis and the communists were the Nazis were nationalists and all the things that go into that. But the communists were universalists, and they truly believed that everyone is a part of the whole. And you're not agreeing with that assessment just means there's something wrong with you. You're defective if you don't believe that. And what's more, they believe that you belong to them, whether you identify as part of their group or not. They believe your labor belongs to them, but perhaps more nefariously than any of that, they believe your children belong to them.
Yes.
And that's why they're even worse than the nationalist fascists. And so that the answer, whether you find yourself in one of those types of regimes or you break it all the way down to the bottom and you just don't want to associate with another member of your church, secession is a hill worth dying on.
Amen.
You know, Britney Spears could definitely use some of that.
Yeah.
I actually saw somebody commented recently that why doesn't she just run away? Like,
right.
Like,
she could just disappear into a crowd.
yeah, she could flee and there would be all these people that would help her, you know? And but I mean, and that's funny, but the answer is that she's trying to save her damn kids too.
Right, yeah.
And that's why she can't. So Boy, I bet you didn't think in the first minute of tonight's show that we were going to go from slavery to free Britney Spears, but here we are.
Here we are.
I bet you didn't think, if all you knew about secession was what you read in 3rd grade, I bet you didn't think that we were going to go from racist to secession to, but this is the way.
I mean, you talk to some people and they would say that secession and racism go hand in hand. So
I know, but
go.
we're using secession to fight against those things.
That's right.
Not support them.
Exactly.
Well, we managed to do it, Sherry.
Yay!
We got all of a few minutes left to get through the finale, so we better go do that.
All right.
We're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this break.
Hi guys, it's Alan here, and I want to take a moment to let you know about one of our supporters who started a new business. Laura Moreau sells 50 different health and wellness all-natural products, from weight loss, supplements, energy enhancers, body toning, longer and stronger hair, and so much more. Do you like coffee? Well, they even have coffee that'll help you drop some pounds. And who doesn't want to drop a few pounds? Go check her out at her online store at lauramoreau.itworks.com today. That's lauramoreau.itworks.com.
Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/AlanMosleyTV. You can follow me on Twitter. It's twitter.com/AlanMosleyTV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/AlanMosleyTV. Also, remember, we're now on Odyssey. That's odyssey.com/AlanMosleyTV. Don't just complain about not having a free speech platform. Go out and support one. It's odyssey.com/AlanMosleyTV. As well as, if you'd rather listen than watch, and I can't even believe you. You're missing the memes, folks. But if you'd rather binge listen than watch, you can go to Anchor FM, all your favorite podcasting platforms of choice. That's anchor.fm/AlanMosleyTV. Sherry, do you have a final thought?
Don't get slaves.
Yeah, just don't do it. Don't
bother slaves.
Just don't bother. Well, yeah, if they are slaves, just leave them alone. Just look.
Maybe not that. Maybe not.
Like
that.
they've got a job to do. You're just getting in the way.
Ooh.
Boy, I'll tell you what. When Postcards comes back, people won't be surprised at this at all. They'll just. This is just what these people do.
Par for the course.
Guys, thank you so much, and we will see you next week.